So, my cat does this thing where he won't eat his food directly from his dish. Instead, he grabs his food from his bowl and eats it off the floor. Doesn't matter what type of dish I use, he does this every time. I think it's a ritualistic thing or something, and it pisses me off. Anyway, this leaves a smell even after I clean up the mess. The stench just kind of lingers, and to help with that, I burn candles. I go through a lot of candles. So recently, I ran out of candles, and I needed to resupply, so I headed to my local Bath & Body Works, and finally I reached the checkout with my small fortune of candles, and I am greeted by a cute lady with very kind eyes. Now, I've been outside before, I've seen women before, this is nothing new, but as she was ringing me up, she was kind of like gassing me up too. She complimented the fit, complimented the beard. She hit me with a,
"Yeah, look at the fucking drip. Yeah."
I thought it was possible I was being flirted with. But it felt like an egotistical thought to have. But I couldn't help myself from wondering if I should make a move, ask for a phone number, ask for an Instagram or something. I started picturing us getting to know each other over coffees, which would evolve into dinners. She would meet my beloved friend group and my family, and we would get closer. We would learn all there is to know about each other and move in together, get married, grow old together. I would die first. My dying wish would be for her to live the rest of her life happy. I tell her to remarry, but she can't bring herself to do it. She can't get over me, and eventually she dies, and we become one in the afterlife forever. And like Neo, I awoke from my flash of a fake life, and the thought of my stinky apartment came rushing back to me, the fear of rejection firmly planted in my amygdala, and I say thank you and walk off. On my lonely drive home, I scolded myself for my cowardice and wondered how things would be different if I just gestured towards reciprocating an ounce of flirtation. What if I just shot my shot? But alas, I did no such thing, and my life branched at that moment. The chance at love in the Bath & Body Works and perhaps a 30% discount was not the path I chose. What if I did things differently is a very common thought for people to have. It's not necessarily regret, but a consideration, a query into an incalculable database of choices we make every day. But these thoughts are exceptionally fleeting, rarely follow to any sort of conclusion, often because 1, they are not reality, so who cares? And 2, perhaps at the end of that thread lies a lovely feeling of regret, so why bother? But this idea provides the foundation for The Altars, one of my favorite games that I played last year, and it uses this idea to explore a number of themes and interesting narrative ideas that I think make this game truly special. The Altars follows Jan Dolsky, a builder on an expedition crew for the Allied Corporation, heading to an uncharted world in search for Pydium, a new substance that could radically change the world. Unfortunately, the ship is damaged on approach, and the crew is forced to use escape pods to get to the planet's surface. Jan is the only survivor. Shortly after discovering the fate of his crew, Jan finds their mobile base, which was intended to serve as transportation, housing, and workstations for the crew, but Jan is fairly unremarkable and cannot operate this behemoth of a machine on his own. He gets into contact with Allied Corp, and they advise him to scour for resources and experiment with Rapidium, which results in Jan cloning himself. This is done using Rapidium in conjunction with a supercomputer on board the base, which contains a memory bank of Jan's life. Using these memories, Jan can choose critical points in his life and simply make another choice, and the computer will then create the body using Rapidium and the mind by modeling the rest of Jan's life up until this point. They are biologically the same, but mentally, they are altered. Isn't that awesome? Maybe if we follow AI to its logical conclusion someday, we too can create clones with altered minds to fit whatever needs our employers have for us. So that's the premise. This is not meant to be a review of The Altars. That said, this is my quick review of The Altars, in case you are questioning whether or not you want to play it. The Altars is a survival, base builder, social sim narrative game, and it uses all of these mechanics in a way that leaves you feeling like you're doing a juggling act in order to keep the base going. That juggling act involves mining for materials, researching anomalies to create new and advanced equipment, managing the work of the crew, and creating new crew members as situations arise, and keeping them all happy. The Altars does a great job of really making you feel like middle management, where shit rolls downhill, but also uphill. There is a sun approaching the planet, and that is bad news because the sun eviscerates everything in its path. You and your Altars need to get your mobile base up and running so that you can escape the sun's wrath, at least temporarily. And you have to do a balancing act of working your Altars enough to make progress, but if you work the Altars too hard, they'll rebel. I'll get more into the social aspects of things when I talk about the narrative and the themes, but what you need to know is while the story of the Altars is the special sauce, the game is incredibly well made and competently balances a lot of mechanics from multiple genres with grace. Whether it be that water in the desert feeling from finding a vein of minerals that I was desperate for and building a mining outpost to get them back to my ship, or the intrigue of finding an anomaly and finding out what new and exciting ways it would hurt me, or the subsequent upgrades that I would get for the discovery, or building new parts of the base and seeing how it would affect my crew. There's always too much to do in the best way. The game always kept me on my heels with the sun's approach and the constant complications in our objectives, but it was never in a frustrating way. I typically found myself having a day or two to spare at the end of each chapter, though I did fail once or twice. So that's my fast and loose review of the game. Obviously, I recommend playing it. This next portion will contain some spoilers, but in my opinion, this is a game that is somewhat replayable, and if you plan on watching through this point, I don't think it'll affect your enjoyment of the game. So, The Altars tells an incredibly human story, both on a personal level and a general level. The game has a fascinating hook, and I found it more than delivered on that initial premise. Jan is stranded and creates these altars as essentially tools to provide new areas of expertise. By choosing at some point in his life to stay home instead of going to college, he creates a Jan who became a technician and can help make repairs with maximum efficiency. Or by choosing his work over his relationships in another part of his life, he can create a scientist. These guys excel at their crafts, but playing God isn't so simple. You created them for help, but they're not tools, they are people. Each has lived a life of successes and failures in different ways. Each, as a result, has different temperaments, different ideals, different skills, but at the same time, they are all Jan. Pardon my corny video essay-ass bullshit here, but in a way, I found the Jans to be a microcosm of humanity. Different in a lot of ways, but the same where it really counted. They all knew that their dad was a dick, they all felt an obligation to their mother, they all had ups and downs, and perhaps most interestingly, with the exception of Jan Prime, all have lived completely fabricated lives because of the Rapidium. Some come to grips with this in different ways, but to my recollection, none of them fully embrace the fact that their lives are fake and give in to nihilism. Some recognize it, but even still, they want to follow through on that research that they never finished, or they ask about that friend that they had. It's artificial and irrational, but it's strikingly human all at once. The Jans get into conflict with one another, and even with Jan Prime, it's up to you to find the common ground and sort through this fucked up situation. This really spoke to me in this fucked up divide the world that we live in. Sure, maybe things are not as simple as finding common ground, but I do believe that humans have some undeniable truths and commonalities that should unite us despite fundamental differences in values. We're all gonna die. For the most part, we all get fucked by taxes and corporations. We all experience loss. We all long for love and connection, and we're all human in some way. If we're ever going to fix this place, we have to find a way to empathize and connect and work together. In the opening hours of the game, you'll start by creating Technician Jan and Scientist Jan. As I mentioned before, Technician Jan is blue-collar, down-to-earth, and despite his suspicions, he wants to unwind after a day's work by asking you to play beer pong with him. Scientist Jan is obviously hyper-intelligent, arrogant, pragmatic, and he wants you to force folks to work overtime in order to ensure the mission's success. It's clear who comes off as the more likable Jan. I found myself at odds with Brainiac Jan early and often until a moment of connection. Through some conversations in the game, I found out that all of us were at one point in a shitty band, and I was able to coerce everyone into a vocal performance, and it was alright. But that moment of connection was the start of a shift in my relationship with the scientist. By the end of the game, I found him to be my closest confidant in the entire crew. Someone I not only trusted as an advisor, but someone I got to know and actually liked, and I think in ways we wore each other down to see each other's perspectives.
You've come a long way from being the guy who said only success is worth anything. Didn't we both come a long way? I underestimated you.
This smorgasbord of yawns not only provides him with the talent and companionship needed to survive, but a near nightmarish hindsight and foresight into his life and what could have been. It's clear Jan struggles with self-doubt, and he looks at these altars as missed opportunities. He could have been there for Mom. He could have done right by his partner. He could have excelled in his career. But ultimately, these altars are not some idealized version of Jan. They are simply different. Where they excelled in some places, they failed in others. The climax of the game, in my opinion, is when Jan Prime decides to overwrite his own consciousness to become a better leader. In this process, he makes a number of revelations by essentially having a conversation with himself. He comes to the realization that the supercomputer had limited oxygen reserves during the crash landing, and it calculated the lowly builder Jan was the most likely to successfully carry out the mission. Despite Jan's self-evaluation as a failure, the quote-unquote objective calculations done by this supercomputer came to a different conclusion.
Yes. The math pointed to you. How do you know all this? Because you know it. You always did. But you were so focused on your mistakes.
I was busy making tough decisions and figuring out how to avoid bad choices.
What is a bad choice, really? You feel you could have made a lot of different decisions in your life, but without those choices, good or bad, you wouldn't be who you are. The person with the best chance to pull it off. Maybe it's not you who needs to change, but your perspective.
And this is sort of the message of the altars. It was not a mistake to walk away from that Bath & Body Works coworker. It was simply a choice. If I want to become the guy who isn't afraid to make a move like that, or the guy who fights for a better job, or become a guy who talks about shit no one asked about on YouTube, all of that exists in me already. And it exists in you too. The quote-unquote mistakes you've made were not mistakes, but choices. We can never know what consequences we'll face for those choices, but whether those are good or bad, they do not define you, and they have no bearing over who you become, no matter what people try to tell you. Of course, if you murdered somebody, maybe that's a different story. But you have everything you need to find your place in this world, to lead a fulfilling life, and to find happiness. Sure, you could have become a doctor, but then you wouldn't be you, and while you may not feel like it at this exact moment, you're exactly who you need to be. Now, I have one gripe with this game. At some point in the story, Jan is asked about his sexual preferences, and you can choose to be bisexual. It is also possible to create a gay altar at some point. So why, if I choose to be bisexual and create a gay altar, can I not play with the idea of fuck?
If I could take another turn, my life would never be the same. If I could get another chance today. On the path I left behind, I've been roaming with no guiding light, but I'm no longer left all by myself. Together we can win this fight. Things that we lost, the personal cost, are they really gone?